Resident Evil 5 falls at such a weird point in the series in my eyes. See, RE4, at least to me, had managed to somewhat bridge the gap between action and survival horror to some acceptable degree, so that if you like more action-based stuff, you'll be able to enjoy the game, and if you like survival horror, even though toned down to the point where it mostly felt like an action game, it was still an acceptable balance of the two elements, according to me and the two people I talked about this with. But when we got to RE5, it was very obvious that Capcom wanted to take this series in an action-focused direction. Limit the puzzles, make them simple, here's a bunch of guns, it's co-op now so you can bro out, we pumped Chris full of 8 years worth of steroids, and you can't pause the game to use items. Action games! And so there was an obvious divide forming in the fan base that was already there because of RE4's changes. So when I talk to people about 5, I either hear, yeah, I thought it was awesome, or yeah, I thought it was fucking shit, or I don't fucking care, or this isn't even Resident Evil anymore. Which that last one is just fucking hilarious. As far as where I fall on the divide, I've always accepted that RE5 is a fantastic game from pretty much every angle, objectively. The gameplay is fun, even if it does feel like you're just slugging through RE4 again. It looks just fucking gorgeous, and the story is, if nothing else, entertaining for a while. Those are my controlled opinions on the game anyways. My uncontrolled ones tend to go on long tangents about Sheva and healing items, but I don't have enough time to talk about that dynamic. So instead of talking about what Resident Evil 5 is, let's talk about what it could have been. A more single-player, merchant-having game. Today on Gaming Mysteries, I'll be talking about the beta of Resident Evil 5. Now, Resident Evil 5 began development in 2004 and was announced in June of 2005, though it wasn't shown to the public until 2 months later with this very early CG trailer that is essentially just a concept trailer that gives you a general idea of what this game is going to be like. This is Chris, here are some zombie-like dudes, and actual zombies have fun in the middle of nowhere. But it also lets us see that there were some different elements in place. For one, Chris looks much younger and less roid rage in this 2005 trailer than he did in the final version of the game. The trailer shows a group of mysterious enemies who were confirmed to be T-virus zombies, but they were changed to the Majin because the developers believed group attacks and organized assaults would not have been possible with absent-minded felons, aka zombies. And while that's completely true, they're zombies, so it's not really their purpose. They're just meant to stumble around and be humorous. Maybe eat brains, I don't know. But, yeah, I'm just saying. The most important noticeable difference seen from this trailer, though, is that Chris is alone, with no one assisting him. This is because Resident Evil 5 was originally intended to be a single-player game, much like the game it was building off of, RE4. This remained the case for most of the game's development, which is why in even some of the later trailers, you still only see Chris, even in the shots that were used in the final game that show Chris and Sheva and maybe some other guy. Though over the course of the game's development, the idea of co-op or assist characters would be implemented into the game and changed. Change pretty much sums up this game's development, though, as we not only saw changes in gameplay, but also major changes to the game's plot. Now, a lot of this information is regarding the various builds of RE5 from 2004 before it was ever shown to the public, so there's no footage of this stuff, but there is some nice concept art, which I'll show where I can because there isn't art to depict everything I'll be talking about. Resident Evil 5 went under a variety of plot revisions, from Chris not being a part of the BSAA and meeting up with Jill in Africa, who would be the leader of a BSAA unit, and you would team up with her for a bit despite the game being single player, and in another build, you would get her to join you as a permanent partner, and in the best version of the story, Jill's been kidnapped, so Chris has to travel to Africa with Barry Burton, because it's the only way, and I can only imagine what a magical plot would unfold.
Casualties continue to mount over the long years I have struggled.
Wait! I'll go and get another rope.
More and more I find myself wondering if it's all worth fighting for.
Wesker!
Who knows?
It's Forrest. Oh my God.
Resident Evil 5.
But they never do that. Fuckers. This is but a mere sample of the potential plot of RE5. In the video description, you'll find a link where you can read through what is essentially the plot of What If Resident Evil 5. It's a pretty interesting read, but it's also very, very long, and I already ramble, so this video would end up going on for a couple of days if I read it. Plus, discussing some of the later story elements that were changed would just divulge blatant spoilers, and I don't need people complaining to me about that. But I implore you, if you find this interesting, check out that link and read that shit if you get the chance. Okay? There we go. Moving on though, while RE5 saw a variety of plot revisions, certain story elements and characters remained persistent throughout all versions of the game. For example, Chris was always going to be the main character, regardless of whether or not he was alone or with someone, and Wesker was going to be the villain. Jill was going to play some role in all of the different versions of the story, ranging from teaming up with you for a bit, and dying. Interestingly enough, in one build of Resident Evil 5, there was going to be some kind of story branch where if you progressed in a certain way, Jill would perma-die, a la Fire Emblem. And the idea of permanently killing off such an important character and having Chris continue with the story without that character fascinates me quite a bit. And I really wish an element like that would have remained in the game, as it could have led to an interesting plot point. Another story element that remained the same was the presence of Sheva. Again, while RE5 was intended to be a single-player game at first, at some point during a certain build, you were able to meet up with a local militia NPC version of Sheva. So she was still going to be in the game, she just wasn't going to run around using all your healing items after an enemy brushed up against you. And of course, while talking about characters, you can't leave out the greatest left-out character for RE5, and that's the merchant from RE4. Yes, this majestic creature was to appear in RE5 in various locations, as I would expect, but for whatever reason he was removed, which is complete bullshit, because all throughout that game I was thinking to myself, if only when I bought and sold things someone would thank me or tell me that they'd buy it at a higher price, or that I didn't have enough cash, that this game would be vastly superior. I base this on nothing but poor judgment calls at 1 AM when I'm recording this. Now that's really as much story stuff / merchant stuff I can go into without going into the spoiler land I mentioned earlier, so let's focus more around the gameplay and other things of that nature for a bit, shall we? Now based on early trailers, RE5 seems like it was going to play pretty much the same during its entire development cycle, and by that I mean play like Resident Evil 4, only without co-op at some points, but if it isn't broken, don't fix it, I guess. But while Chris remained the same, many things around him didn't. Of course, the enemies are no longer zombies, but these assholes have sweet new fighting techniques, like chair! Embrace the horror. There also seem to be way more enemies than normal, and they are aggressive as fuck! Waves of thrown knives everywhere. It all seems far too chaotic to actually play through, but this was a trailer from 2007, and we already know that this area from the trailer was just a test map, and Sheva is nowhere to be found, so it may have still been a single-player game at this point, so maybe it wasn't supposed to look playable, just cool, and if that's the case, mission accomplished, because it looks pretty cool, it just didn't happen in the final game. Speaking of unused areas, though, a number of areas were omitted for interesting reasons, except for the not interesting ones, which were the test stages, but this other stuff is interesting. Let's start with this desert area, an area that was removed because the developers thought that such a large and open level would be impossible to cover and defend against enemies in. And that's a completely valid point, but it's still interesting, and it also reminds me of that portion of the game where you're riding in the back of the car shooting at shit through a desert-like area. I don't know if that's what became of this giant left-out area, but I will claim that was the reason, based on nothing. Now, looking at unused areas, you'll come across some unused night areas. It's said that early in development, the time of day and weather were supposed to have a major impact on the gameplay and affect Chris's abilities, which to me seems like it would have added a super cool dynamic to the gameplay, especially if it wasn't dependent on what stage you were in, and instead was this persistent day-night weather cycle. May have made things more survival horror-y. There's also some altered versions of stages that actually made their way into the final product, like this version of Irving's boat, which has no boss, or the game letting you get to this one position to snipe enemies on the bridge. Not really sure how Chris got up there, but it was a thing, so there you go. But what is without a doubt the most changed area in the game is the ruins of Camp Pronouncia. In the final version of the game, I hated this area and thought it was really boring, but originally it held so much more potential. Originally when Chris and Sheva arrived, Chris would fall underground into the depths of the ruins, while Sheva would try to find a way back to him. The area was to be filled with a ton more puzzles and traps, though these ideas had to be scrapped because of the co-op thing, as it got too confusing with 2 people. So way to fuck things up, co-op. Apparently there was also going to be a section of the area that would have Chris swimming underwater while finding air pockets to not drown, which sounds not fun at all. Thank you for not adding that to the game. The rest of the stage would be filled with twisted paths being compared to abstract paintings of sorts. The game would have you control Chris alone in the dark in an area not swarming with a ton of zombies, but with just a few really powerful enemies, including a new type of hunter and insect monsters. The whole area sounds like a lot of fun and like survival horror. But that was the beta of Resident Evil 5. It almost seems like the original Resident Evil 5 was going to be more survival horror-ish, what with the day-night weather thing, more puzzles, the game being a single-player experience, which I would have really loved, because interacting with other people is what true horror is made of, darker areas, more enemies, and Jill's permadeath. That sounds like a pretty rad fucking game. And honestly, out of everything I've talked about on this segment, knowing what this game could have been and seeing how much potential it had, and knowing that it won't ever be that, kind of bums me out. It's been a while since doing one of these have bummed me out. That's not to say the final product is bad, though. It's not. It's a great game. I'm just saying that this probably would have been better. That's all. Single-player game, you guys. Single-player game. I like those. This has been Gaming Mysteries. Thanks for watching.
I'll just go and get some fresh air and be eaten by a monster.
Yo, homies, welcome back to End Slate edition of End Slate. I'm tired and I don't really feel that well, and I want to take a nap, but I gotta do End Slate before I do that. Why I couldn't do this after I recorded that video audio, I don't know. But speaking of that video audio, I hope you enjoyed the Gaming Mysteries on the beta of Resident Evil 5 that I made. I'm meaning to talk about that subject for a while now, although I didn't intend to do it during the Halloween special. Kind of a last minute thing. Or not a last minute thing. Kind of a last minute thing. By last minute, I mean August. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. But yeah, since I'm not really feeling great, not going to be a super long End Slate, but that's okay, because the last End Slate I did was like, 5 minutes? So, you know, and we got 2 months. We got 2 months for this. So you kids should be good on the End Slates. Okay? Everything's going to be cool. So let's just go ahead and do this End Slate. Top of the screen, there are videos. Let me tell you about them. One of the videos is the last video I did on this channel, and that was a bullshit creepypasta story time on Legend of Zelda 64. A lot of people were positive towards that video, were glad that I started doing the creepypasta things again, and no problem. It's Halloween. Yeah. So, there's that. And then the other video I'd like to recommend is part 1 of the Let's Play I started on Corpse Party for the PSP, which I'll be doing Obscure Gaming on either, like, next week or the week after. Realistically, it's not going to be till the week after, because I need to record more footage. I got kind of behind on recording some of Corpse Party. Not a super long game, though, so should work out. But, you know, like I said, realistically, like 2 weeks from now. But yeah, there's those 2 things. And at the bottom of the screen, if you like the videos and you want to see more of the videos, you may subscribe. And then YouTube will probably never actually send that to your subscription box, because that's how YouTube works. So yeah, if you want to subscribe, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And if you want to like the video because you liked it, then you can like it. And if you didn't like it, then, you know, you don't have to like it, obviously. Stating just these amazing facts. Now I'm going to go to sleep, because Grandpa Yuriofwind's had a long night. Good night, kids. See you guys next time on whatever the fuck I do. Could be anything, really. It might be a creepypasta thing again, actually. You know, it's been a while since I've done those regularly. I don't know. We'll see. Bye.